And a warm welcome back to Sunnyside Journals, where today I'm going to do a little bit more work on Infelice. So this is part two. Um, we started it yesterday, so I'll put a link below in case you missed it and you want to go back and watch that one first. And if not, just continue along with us today. So of course, when you start a video, you have to clear your throat. Oh my goodness. This is my second go at making this video. So I unfortunately got started on it yesterday, and due to a myriad of unfortunate circumstances, it just did not work out. And unfortunately, I did start into the book, but I'm going to sort of replay it today, and because I really want to show you how I cut apart a book and how I approach it. So yesterday in the video, you came along with me, and we inspected our little book that we're going to work on. I decided that yes, I'm going to do a hidden hollowback spine, or hollowback hidden spine, because this is still in quite nice shape. This book, I'm calling her a she because there's a young lady on the front. I don't know why it's working out that way. And she's almost 100 years old. In 3 months, this book will be 100 years old because it was published in 1920. So, and as I explained before, I always put a Post-it note inside with the copyright year whenever I can, whenever there's one in it. So she's quite an advanced lady. So I took you with me over to my little area in my studio where I have bins of fabric scraps that I've collected all from secondhand sources. Some of them are pieces of fabric scraps. Some of them are actually shirts, table napkins, aprons. Anything can be used when you need fabric for a junk journal. Don't just think you've got to go to a fabric store and start buying fabric. You don't. You can go to your thrift store. I sort through the bed sheets, the pillowcases, the tablecloths, the tea towels, and like when you're making little golden book journals, head over to the children's clothing section because you can get some really cute fabric to use on your spines for your little golden books. So don't always think that you've got to go to a fabric store to buy your fabrics. You only need a little bit for your spine, and you can do it from a piece of clothing, from a table napkin. So we looked over several pieces of fabric, and so this morning I just want to let you know that I have decided on this one, which is the same fabric I used on Poems of Action, which I made a couple of weeks ago. This blue in this fabric is just so perfect. This is sort of a dusky turquoise teal color, and this blue here is such a lovely complement to it. You're not going to end up seeing much of this fabric because it goes inside the spine, but it's enough that for me, I'm enough of a fuss budget that even if it's only me who knows it's there, I like that. So I went ahead and decided that this will be the fabric. I looked over all the wrapping papers, the vintage wrapping papers, and newer wrapping papers, but certainly secondhand. And I decided I didn't like any of them. First of all, they were shiny ones. They didn't have a matte finish to them. And so I didn't like that they were shiny. And so I did take the time to go through my scrapbooking papers, which I don't have a lot of. Again, I get them from repurposed sources. But I did find this one, and I like it. It's got teeny tiny little polka dots on it. And it really, really, again, complements this sort of dusky turquoise, and I think it will look really nice inside as end papers. And I rather like that it's a simple repetitive pattern because it's going to allow me have some fun and maybe put some pockets in, maybe some Victorian fussy cutting. I'm not sure yet, but when you have a simple pattern like this for your end papers, it really opens up the having fun with adding ephemera right to your end papers. So that decided, I also started going through some of my other stuff, because for a while I was thinking about maybe putting an interesting page as my end papers. So I started pulling out pages like that. I thought that might look nice as an end paper, but it's actually not big enough. It just wouldn't look right. I even thought she might look nice. She kind of reminded me of the young lady that's here, and that might be a nice end paper. But again, it's not quite big enough. I like her as well, so I will be incorporating her somewhere in the book. Part of me thought about, yeah, maybe that could work as an end paper, and I sort of played around with it and looked at it and imagined where I would cut and place her. But then again, she's so beautiful, I just wouldn't feel right starting to put pockets and things on top of her. So I'm going to keep her. I'm going to put her in with, I always start a basket when I'm starting a book. Here's my napkins that we chose yesterday. So all these things will go in to the basket, and that's how I can gather things up and put them aside when I'm done. So now the next thing I usually will do when I'm going to get started on a junk journal is I pull out my own working journal, and I'll start a page just for the book, and that way I can refer back to it as needed. So, because as ever, when I start working on, I'm going to sit down now. Sorry if you hear me sort of grunting and groaning here. Trying to get my chair over. There we go. That way I can keep it open, and when I have a brain cramp and think, okay, how big do I want these signature leaves? I'll have it written in my book. So this is my little book that I go to. In the front is my personal section that I just write in, and in the back I keep track of the journals that I make. I keep track of what I've put in them. I keep track of when they sold, how much I sold them for, and so we're going to get started here, and we're going to give Infelice her own page so that I can get started. So I will go up here and I will write the title, Infelice, and then whenever possible I write the copyright year. And then what I will do is I'll measure. So she is 5 inches by 7.5 inches by 1 inch. Okay, good. And then what I do is, when I'm going to be doing a hidden hollowback spine, I like to guesstimate how many signatures I'm going to put in. And although I've only been doing hollowback spines for a short while, I guess, that was my ruler settling that noise. How long? Just since January. It's just recently I took Nick the Booksmith's course, which is very good. She's a good teacher. I've learned that I like smaller signatures, more signatures and smaller signatures, rather than trying to cram, say, 2 big fat signatures in or 3 big fat signatures in. I would rather fit many smaller signatures in. you end up with a much nicer finished product. And when you're working on a regal old girl like Infelice, who's 100 years old, I really think she deserves some TLC. So what I do is I look at the size of the spine, and just going on what I've learned in the past from doing other journals, I'm pretty good at sort of eyeballing how many I want. And I've learned through my own experience, for me, everyone's different, sewing in signatures is the bane of my existence. And I doubt I will ever videotape me sewing in signatures because there's a lot of swearing involved. So it's not going to happen. But for me, something that simplified my sewing in signatures world was I learned very quickly that I like an uneven number of signatures in a book. So I will usually go with 3 or 5 or 7. And that way I can have the center signature go right down the middle of the spine. And then I can balance out however many other signatures there are on either side of that center signature. And I find that I get a more balanced finished product that closes nicer. So I'm looking at the size of Infelice, and normally with about a 1-inch spine, normally I would err on the side of doing 4 signatures, but in this case, I am going to go with 5 signatures, but I'm going to make them smaller so that they fit in nicely. And you'll end up with certainly a nicer looking profile on your book. You'll get a nicer meeting of all your edges of your pages. You won't get as quirky a look for these finished papers. I mean, I don't have the machinery to do the smooth cutting on the end pages if you ever watch actual professional booksmiths. And I'm not sure I'd even want that, because part of the fun of a repurposed journal is that it really does look like somebody lovingly remade the journal. So, I like that that aspect of our journals. So what I will do next is I've decided I'm going to put 5 signatures in her. I don't know how many pages yet how many leaves per signature I'm going to put in the 5. That's something that I figure out at the time. I will start gathering papers and then folding them and putting them together in the order I think I want. And that's when I'll decide how many sheets will go in to each signature. So I leave that blank for now. Now, another thing that I will do is here I will start just jotting down the initial ideas that I'm having for this book. So initially, the color scheme that I'm thinking of is blues, turquoises, ivories, certainly off-white, beige. So I'll write that down. I'm imagining, because it's a young lady on the cover, I'm imagining that I'm going to put in some Victorian type ephemera. You know, with the pretty young ladies that are gracefully lounging around sniffing roses and that sort of thing. But they're beautiful and they're charming. So I'm imagining things like that. I'm thinking of anything to do with ladies for now. So, you know, dresses, sewing, botanicals would be nice. Maybe letter writing. That was a big deal back in the day. Oh, letter writing. So as things start popping into my head that I think might be nice to go into Infelice, I'll just start writing it on my list. That way I can refer back to it when I'm getting stumped. If I hit a wall on what am I going to put in this book. And I'm certainly going to be adding fabrics, laces. I think this is a rare time. I'm probably not going to put rickrack in, but I'm going to take a look at my trims and see if there's any pretty trims that would complement her, and certainly ribbons. So that gets me started, and I'll refer back to this all the time. I'll add to it. It'll end up being quite a mess. And then eventually down in the corner, I'll start writing when she's ready to go to her new home. You know, when she goes into the Etsy shop, or when she goes to a new owner, because sometimes, well, right now, most times my books get sold through word of mouth or through somebody messaging me privately. So I'll just write down about the details about the sale. So so that's what I do there. Let's put this aside now. And now I'm going to show you how I go about cutting up poor little Infelice. But you're going to feel better when I'm done. Don't worry. So let me get my little cutting pad. And here's, I'm going to share something with you about what an idiot I am. If you see this blank spot here on my little cutting pad, I got this at one of my thrift stores. And of course, it's not so bad now, but it's absolutely covered in Fabri-Tac. Well, I got the brilliant idea the other day. I thought, oh, I know what, acetone dissolves Fabri-Tac. I'm just going to wash this with acetone and the Fabri-Tac's going to go. Well, this is what acetone also does to the grid marks on your cutting mat. So don't do it. Unless you want a solid green cutting mat, don't use the acetone on your cutting mat. Ah, cheapers. Okay, so you get out your cutting mat. Get out your handy dandy box cutter. This is all I use. I love these. You can get them at the dollar store. I love them because you can give yourself a fresh blade whenever you feel like it's starting to get dull. And you just snap off the end. Always snap away from you, so that sometimes a shard can break off when these snap clean. So always snap away. And that way, if there's a shard, it doesn't go into your eye. So what I do, now as I mentioned before, I already tried to tape part 2 yesterday, and through a series of mishaps, unfortuitous mishaps, it didn't work out. So she is already taken apart, but I'm going to show you what I do and how I do it. So we're going to reenact the excision of Infelice. And so what I normally would do is I get her up on her ends, and then I find where the cover is, and I will open it up like this. Let me take that off. I will open it up like this, and I feel for where you'll get a little opening. Sometimes it's tighter. She's nice and loose. And I will get this front cover out of my way. And you take your box cutter or your X-Acto blade, whatever you're using, and just using the very, very tip. Be careful not to use the entire length of your blade, because you can end up accidentally cutting right through your beautiful spine. And you're just going to slowly take your blade right down this seam like that, and take your time. Sometimes these old books can fall apart like dust, which is lovely, but sometimes they're tough as nails. Sometimes that glue is it's hanging in there. There's a reason why a 100-year-old book is still hanging around after 100 years. That glue is holding on for dear life. So you'll cut right through that first initial page there, like that. And when this comes off, you can literally, usually, bend it right back like this, like so. Imagine that they're still stuck together. I'm trying to do it so that you can see. And then again, just run your blade right down there, and then you will be able to remove the block from the cover. And she's in quite lovely shape. This isn't too bad. She'll need a little bit of tidying up. I'm going to reinforce her. I'm going to put a new piece of light cardstock in there. And I'm probably going to also reinforce her with a bit of Tyvek. We'll do that in the next episode. And then here's your block of the book. So I will start choosing the initial pages that I always like to try and save. The front title. This one has a lovely color plate here. Hold on, where are you, Infelice? There we go. I keep calling her Infelice, and it's not her name. The character in the story, her name is not Infelice. Infelice is the name of, she decides as a young girl that she's going to write a play about her life. And Infelice is the title of her play that she writes. And actually, Julie, thank you. Julie, a kindred spirit after my own heart, had to look up what on earth Infelice means. And it turns out it's Italian for unhappy, which makes me a little unhappy, but I'm going to make this book a nice, happy book. But, Julie, that inspired me because I have a dictionary of Italian to English. And sure enough, I found it in here. Where is it? Oh, here we go. I'm going to stand up so I make sure that you can see it. And it's in here. Infelice. Unhappy. It also added miserable and inconsolable, and it's just all not very nice. So I don't think I'm going to read the book. I leaf through it, as I said, but the poor young lady, to name her life story Unhappiness. Oh. Anyhow, so I will be putting that leaf in as one of the pages in the signature. So I also will save this because it has the copyright date on it. I love saving the copyright date whenever I can. I will also save, I love including the first page of the first chapter. And then sometimes books have very fun, curious titles to the various chapters, and I like to try and find cheeky ways to include those. And I'll leaf through it. But this book is all just chaptered by numbers, so there's nothing unusual there. But I will. Oh, Roscoe! There's a man named Mr. Roscoe. My grandfather's name was Roscoe. Huh. Anyhow, I will try and use many of these pages in the book, make bookmarks out of them, or tuck spots, or journaling cards. So we'll get onto that later. So now we've got Infelice all cut up, and you're going to start feeling better soon. So I will put this aside here. Unfortunately, let me look around here. No, Miss Dot is still downstairs finishing her morning nap in the basement. So Wooster, I'm very sorry. You're going to have to wait to meet Dot. Maybe part 3, our lovely little diva, our little 14-pound diva, will make a showing in the video. So I'm going to turn off the camera for now because I have to do some running around town. And I think what we will be doing next is, I'm one of those people, I work on the cover first as opposed to the signatures. Because if I botch up the cover and the whole thing gets pooched, that means I don't have a whole bunch of papers that are not going to be needed anymore. And trust me, that has, not very often, but it's happened. That I made the signatures first and I did the interior. And then when I finally started working on the cover, and for a variety of reasons, glue mishaps or what have you, the cover just didn't work. And it's heartbreaking when it happens, but it's, life experiences. So I have learned, for me, I get my cover ready, at least 95% ready first. Then I start working on my interior. Plus, I find that getting a beautiful cover ready is really inspiring for me, and that's when the brain juices start going for what I want to put inside it. So we'll be doing that next. This is just short and sweet this morning. Hello to everyone. I hope you all have a great day. I hope you're doing well. Take care, and we'll talk soon. Bye.